Since around the beginning, most of us knew about the death of Remy's brother Ray and how integral his death is to the plot and story. It's not only a motivation for the Remy character, but also our first example of Ember's ruthlessness. But with this unOrdinary update ahead of the series' return in late November, we get to see baby Ray, something I've always wanted to see based on the way Remy talks about him. So today we'll be talking about Ray's first side story chapter. If you want more unOrdinary content, make sure to drop a like and comment how excited you are to see unOrdinary return this month. Me personally, I am ecstatic and can't wait to cover the series weekly. So our first glimpse of Ray is him unpacking at the Wellston boys' dormitory when his new roommate Cuyo walks by and they introduce themselves. Ray offers to help Cuyo, but Cuyo rejects his help, which is where we see our first cracks of this Cuyo character. And much like many people with power in Wellston, we continue the trend of them being the most righteous D-heads. And Cuyo, being the ever sneaky snack on a walk, he asks Ray what his power level is, which is a 3.2 at this time, though Cuyo gives a smirk and smiles, saying 3.5. Cuyo obviously at this point is just like any other tiered student and seems to only care about power, which makes me think based off the past, we may be seeing Ray being turned on by Cuyo and his group of friends. It makes sense, since Cuyo seems to be the type who is all about power. This is further backed up in this episode when Cuyo tells Ray to stick with him and he'll get stronger in no time. But what this comes off to me is just stick with me so I can manipulate and use you. We've seen this before in the past with some tiered students having low tiers do their bidding. Which, speaking of, one of them bumps into Ray and he goes to help the poor girl. Cuyo stops him though, and we see the person Cuyo really is. Like tradition, he believes she did it on purpose and there is no point in even bothering with these low tiers. But as we know, Ray isn't like that and doesn't believe she did it on purpose. I'm really fascinated to see Ray grow in this side story from these humble beginnings to how he became the king of Wellston, because it seems very much like the school before and after Ray was king was so much different from his reign. There was the mention that people accepted others, that it really was a more peaceful time. And I can see why Ray would want to make that change. And this scene shows that Ray is a good-hearted person who doesn't care much about status at all. This is massively different from Arlo, who seems to think status and power is the only thing that matters. And John, who's a psychopathic ruler. It makes me wonder, what would Wellston be like if Ray was still alive? Would he and Remy together be able to stop John or even change his mind? I wonder. So Cuyo was told to go acquaint himself with the royals since he's a higher tiered student and Ray goes with him. This scene is really endearing to Ray in general. He's sorta aloof, but not to a point where he's annoying or anything. But this is also where we're introduced to Cassandra, Wellston's number one. She leaves pretty quickly, so we can't gather much from this interaction. Though based off past experiences, I can see two outcomes. Either she is currently shown in this neutral light on purpose and Uru-chan plans to make her a queen just like all the other queens, ruthless, or she's a good queen, whose smile we see is genuine and her ambiguous words aren't a facade and she's actually a good leader. To be honest though, they may have actually talked about her prior, and if so, I may have forgotten. So put down the comments if I forgot. But the episode ends with Ray asking himself if he could ever become one of them. Currently, it feels like Ray sorta looks up to them, or at least sees their positions and is inspired by them to do better and get to that level. It's very endearing for the audience because his innocence and inexperience in this school makes you really want to believe he'll get to that position and make a change that we all know he did. This episode was really good insight to Ray's first day in Wellston, and I'm really eager to see how this story continues. I think this episode really excelled at giving a glimpse of what Wellston was like before Ray became the king and a look at some key players. I also, of course, want to see more of Cassandra, as her role as Wellston's number one fascinates me, and I want to see how she ruled based off of what we know about Remy and Serafina. Overall, this wasn't some blow-away revelation of an episode, it was more just like an extra, side story, and based off those expectations, I really enjoyed this. I think these episodes may be a highlight for Ray's character when all is said and done. But what do you think about Ray after this episode? Put in the comments below. And remember, if some of these videos you see interest you, click on them. As well, subscribe and ring the bell, give this video a like, and know that I have a Patreon, where on the $1 tier and above, you can get access to everything. I'll be having a new series for patrons only come January, so you don't want to miss out on that. Thanks for watching the video, bye-bye.